So as a lot of you know from following us again, that our journey started the first week in March 2020. Nicole pretty much developed having tics overnight, and she was at school for a little while, probably only about 2 or 3 weeks, having this before the world started to fall apart and we were in a national pandemic and there was no school. So the tics that she had weren't noticeable by anybody. And so she didn't really have to deal with a school environment or friends having tics and Tourette's. And then her Tourette's exacerbated, got worse during lockdown. And we then moved house during lockdown as well. August of 2020, we moved, a big move, to Hertfordshire from Shropshire. So it's a good 2.5 hours away. When we left Shropshire, it was very difficult because Nicole's disability basically materialised overnight. It was very hard for people to understand it, and therefore she got ridiculed and judged and accused of faking, accused of it not being real, which is really difficult for her to, well, for anybody to take in and understand, because at the end of the day we were dealing with it every day, we still are, and for someone to accuse you of something that you know you have to deal with every single day, saying that it's not real is just, well, it's devastating, it's horrible. So when we moved here and she had to start school, it was kind of a blessing in disguise, I think, because she started as the Nicole with Tourette's. Nobody here knew her as anything else other than Nicole who has Tourette's. So therefore, she was able just to continue to be herself and not feel ridiculed. Obviously, she was lucky enough that she had been raising awareness on TikTok and people knew her on TikTok, so therefore a lot of her peers knew who she was when she got to school. I will just then say now, school have been absolutely fantastic. I'm going to talk some more about how they've been supportive and all those sorts of things, but we went for our first meeting, and at that point Nicole was only diagnosed with a complex tic disorder. She had vocal and motor tics, which is consistent of having Tourette's. However, you can't get diagnosed as having Tourette's until it's been at least 12 months, and at that point it wasn't. So we went to school armed with all our information. I had taken information from the Tourette's Action Charity website, and the school were fantastic. We had an SEN in there, we had a head of year in there, we had deputy head teacher in there, and I tell you what, they were all amazing with Nicole. Nicole was very vocal. Her tics were like swearing at all the teachers. The head teacher asked her if she was looking forward to starting school next week, and she told him to F off. And he was like, sounds great then. And from that point, I knew that we'd gone to the right school. I knew they were going to have our back, and I knew that communication was going to be amazing. And I tell you what, I haven't been wrong. So Jaden has an EHCP. Jaden has, it's Asperger's, but I think under everything now it's under an umbrella of ASD. So Jaden's very black and white in his thinking. He's very routine. He's very, it has to go the way he expects it to go. Otherwise, there's a complete meltdown in any sort of situation. Jaden, because he was diagnosed with a severe delay in speech, language and communication, he had his statement very young. I was a very proactive parent, as I'm sure you can see from this. And he got his statement and his EHCP, which is what it's now called, it's changed over the years, when he was 3-4 years old. He's now 11, he's at secondary school, and I am just about to start working with him now on his support and what he's getting from the school that they're both at. Nicole doesn't have an EHCP. I don't feel an EHCP, knowing what I know from how it's used for Jaden, I don't feel an EHCP is useful to Nicole, because every day is different. So you can't fill in a form on her behaviour, or it's not even behaviour, on her disability, because each day it can change slightly. So we can go a couple of weeks of having her tics are obviously mostly the same, but the FND that kicks in afterwards, that can change and it can vary from time to time. She goes through periods of time, like she went through a period of time where she just kept dropping to her knees, and that was where she was going with it. Then she went for a period of time of her hands locking constantly. Then she went for a period of time of her feet locking constantly. Then it went back to dropping to the floor. Then it went to, what did it go to after that? The like, almost like a passing out. And now we've got the latest thing, which is her eyes closing. Now, this is something we haven't discussed with a paediatrician yet, so I can't really comment completely about what we know or don't know. But as far as I see, that happens after she's been ticking, so therefore for me, that is part of her FND. Her eyes close and they just stay shut. She can't open them. She's got no physical way of opening her eyes. How is that going to help around school? So last week, most days, I think she succeeded in one whole day at school. The other day we were at a charity event, so for Tourette, so that doesn't really count. This week, yesterday, she stayed at school. The day before that, we had to go and sit with her till she calmed down because her tics were horrific, and she was punching herself in the face and like clawing at her face, and she was in a right state due to an incident that happened at school, which then emotions were high and her tics were worse. So for what happens for her when her tics start getting bad, depending on what type of tics that start having, it depends on how the school deal with it. Nicole is quite capable now of knowing when and what to do for herself. So she used to have a little card that she could just like hold up and the teacher would say, yeah, no problem. She doesn't even need to do that now. If she's ticking too much, it's obvious to everybody in the room. If she's whistling or if she's banging the table or hitting herself in the face or throwing stuff, then she just leaves the room. She can sometimes either go for a bit of a walk to try and cool herself down, listen to some music, or she can go straight down to medical and she can sit in a room that they have there. They've got like bean bags. It's like a bit sensory. So she can sit in there and she can listen to music and just kind of calm herself down. She does seem to have adopted a particular chair by the computers, which seems to be the chair that she goes to sit in and tries to calm herself down. Now, it can either escalate, in which case I get a phone call, or it can calm down and she'll go back to lessons. Then it can escalate more, so she'll go back. It really is a play-by-ear situation. As I say, emotions play a big part in it, and it can make a difference what's going on in the daytime. Now, one of these questions I got here is, do I pick her up every time? I've pretty much answered that. No, I don't. Sometimes if she's ticking and it's manageable, then I don't have to go and collect her. She'll calm herself down and she'll go back to lessons. Other times I do have to pick her up and she'll come home. If she calms down enough and it's early enough, then I will take her back to school. That hasn't happened very often because normally it's later on in the day or it's lunchtime and then she's exhausted because the tics have exhausted her, and then the FND kicks in, and for her it's just not worth going. So we let her recover, and then she will then get her Google Classrooms. Luckily, all homework and work is on Google Classroom. So she just has to log in and she can see what's been going on in the lesson. She can do, she can do homework and she can catch up that way. Yes, unfortunately, she does have to catch up. Yes, unfortunately, it then becomes in her own time, but that's life, unfortunately. Nothing is plain sailing, and she has to understand that, the same as we understand that. Obviously, I'm there for her, I'll support her. If she needs help, then I'll help her. And just as equally, if she doesn't understand something because it was covered in a lesson and it's now in a homework, she can get in touch with any one of the teachers at any point via like emails through the Google Classrooms, or go directly to the teacher and they will all support her. She's never ever made to feel under pressure, and I think that is a massive thing from the school. The other thing that someone said is, knowing that you'll pick her up, maybe she uses it as an excuse. I can guarantee 110% Nicole would rather be at school than home. I know Nicole inside out, and I'm sure there are some children that would take advantage of a situation. She isn't one of them. And so it's never used an excuse. That's all I can say really about that one. I think I've kind of I've covered how schools support her. Someone asked, would I move her schools? I think that's because been recently on my TikTok, I've been showing that Nicole has been coming home a lot. It's got nothing to do with the school, and it's got nothing to do with her group of friends or her peers. It's just a hairy time at the moment, and tics and Tourette's can wax and wane in severity. So obviously she's going through a period of time where it's quite bad at the moment. Obviously going back to school, being a U10, having more focus about actual doing GCSEs and thinking about mocks and thinking about coursework. For a normal child, for want of a better word, Freddie, although he's probably not actually normal. Anyway, I just haven't managed to break him like I have Nicole and Jane yet. And yes, I do say that. And yes, I'm sure I'm going to get hammered for saying it, but I've said it now. So for a normal child, it's bad enough, and it's worrying enough and stressful enough and all of those things. So for Nicole having her tics and having Tourette's, it's doubly as hard. It is. I will say it's harder for her. She does well. She keeps up, and so far right this second, she isn't behind on anything. And myself and the school work closely together in order to assure that doesn't happen. So right this second, she doesn't need anything else from the school, and she doesn't need anything else from me. The next thing surrounding school and that subject will be the GCSEs, and her having a scribe, and her having to go into a separate room, and potentially having extra time for her exams. But that is now something that I will need to discuss, and later on I can do another update of a video if anybody's interested. But hopefully I've kind of covered most of the questions, and given you a little bit of an insight, and probably bored you with my monotone voice, around school and how it works and what happens when she's ticking or when it's too bad. So thank you.